Hello everybody, Rokimakushin here, and welcome to something a little bit different. Uh, in this little series that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be going over each Pokemon and how they fare in a sort of draft format. Uh, so how many points they normally cost, and how well they end up faring with like their move pools and everything. And I'm going to be doing this for both the Paldea decks as well as the Nat decks per video. So might as well start at the start of the Pokedex really with Venusaur here. Now Venusaur itself is a very good Pokemon. It normally ranges around the middle of the tier. Sorry, I'm moving stuff around. Venusaur normally sits around the middle of the bracket, or like the middle of the board. Around most boards would end up being about 20 points maximum. Venusaur will normally sit around 12 to 9, which overall for Venusaur, not too bad. But really, it's kind of because Venusaur's got what I like to call the Sun tax. Because Venusaur works so well in Sun, and is such a good Sun user, that kind of inflates Venusaur's numbers a little bit. But I mean, when it comes to a Venusaur's stats, Venusaur's got some pretty good stats overall. Base 80 speed's not too bad, but whenever you're doubling the speed with Chlorophyll, it's it ends up just feeling pretty good. Respectable bulk, can take like a hit or two if needed. Decent special attack, but what really makes that shine a lot even more is just the fact that, it has access to growth. So it's gaining a +2 in both attack and special attack, which means that it can be run. Basically, after a growth in the Sun, while you're in the Sun, you basically just have a Shell Smash, which is a very fantastic move. It makes Venusaur just end up doing so much. And even then, you look at Venusaur's move pool. I have the Nat decks up right now just because, I'm going to be talking about Nat decks here in a little bit. But, you got some good moves on both sides. So, you can run it physical, you can run it special, you can run it kind of mixed. To where, you have what you need. You got Weather Ball for a fantastic move in the Sun. Overall, Venusaur has always felt pretty good, especially in the Sun. And with growth giving that +2 to both attacking stats, it ends up being a very strong attacker while in the Sun. But that's kind of where the good kind of ends for Venusaur. Because of the Sun tax, Venusaur really doesn't have much else outside of Sun. And you really can't lower Venusaur's points on most draft boards, because if you lower the points, that just makes Sun teams stronger. Which is kind of unfortunate because, I see a lot of Sun teams, and I've been seeing a lot of Sun teams in draft. And I don't see Venusaur on those teams, which is kind of unfortunate because, I'm a big fan of Venusaur. I like Venusaur a lot. I've used it a bunch. But it really only works in Sun, which is kind of unfortunate. However, Venusaur at least was able to get a Mega Evolution. And if we look at Mega Venusaur's stats, this is kind of going to be going only in the Nat decks or old gen drafts if you are taking part in a Gen 6 or a Gen 7 draft. Mega Venusaur is fantastic and can be run on basically any team. If you need a grass type or a grounded poison type, both are being super helpful on a draft because you always want to have the Fire Water Grass core. That's always super important to have. And Mega Venusaur is an absolute monster. gaining so much extra bulk. It goes from 83 to 123. That is so much extra bulk. You end up taking physical hits so well. Your special defense increases as well, going from 100 to 120. And you go from 100 to 122 special attack. So you can still hit pretty hard. And with some pretty good... And with a fantastic defensive ability in Thick Fat, you end up losing your weaknesses to both fire and ice. So really, the only thing that ends up really taking out Mega Venusaur is super effective flying and super effective psychic. And even then, Mega Venusaur is so bulky that you really don't end up worrying too much about it. It just makes Mega Venusaur super versatile. It can be run as a physical wall, special wall. You can run a little bit more offensive Venusaur, like invest a little bit into the special attack. Because, like, you know, you still got that 122 special attack, so you probably still want to use it. And you still have the fantastic move pool of Venusaur. So, you know, Mega Venusaur still sits pretty comfortably. He normally sits in, like, I believe, like, 16 through 13. Which, like, you know, if you see a Mega Venusaur for 13, take it. Because, you know, it's going to carry. But, like, you know, like, the 16 range, kind of around there, is normally, I believe, where Mega Venusaur sits. So, you know, still, a super defensive Pokemon and super nice to have. Can still do out some... can still dish out some pretty okay damage with that 122 special attack, though. So, you know, overall, Venusaur kind of does a really good job when it comes to draft. If you have Sun, like, you know, you might want to get Venusaur, but if you need if you need a defensive grass type, Mega Venusaur is also there. But that's kind of where the pros of Venusaur kind of end. Because, like, you know, I was talking about, like, a little bit of the cons of Venusaur when it came down to its reliant on Sun and its Sun tax. And that's kind of where I'm going to be going into a little bit of the unfortunate part when it comes to Venusaur. Because of the Sun tax and because there's so many good Sun Sweepers, really, a lot of the time, if you're running Sun, you're gonna be having, like, you're gonna be going for, like, some of the past Paradox mons. So if we pull those up, so, like, you know, if we look up the ability Photosynthesis, you know, you've got, well, Flood Remain's not gonna be allowed, but, like, you know, most drafts allow Gouging Fire, Roaring Moon, Walking Wake. You're going to be wanting to get, like, one of these. And if you get Walking Wake, well, now you have your special attacker already there. So, you know, you don't need Venusaur if you've got Walking Wake as your special attacker. You've also got, like, Raging Bolt. Down here, there's also Brute Bonnet, Sandy Shocks. Sandy Shocks is not too bad when it comes to being in the sun. Scream Tail, Slitherwing. So, like, you know... And, like, yeah. Sandy Shocks and Slitherwing kind of also end up sitting around where Venusaur ends up sitting. So, you know, you can't really use Venusaur as well if you already have one of those, because you don't want to just load up your team with only your Sun Pokemon. If you do that, like, you know, you're so reliant on Sun, if you lose your Weather Setter, then, you know, your team's gonna crumble. And even then, the past Paradox Pokemon perform so well. A lot of the past Paradox Pokemon perform so well because they have good typing, fantastic stat spread, and they don't need the Sun completely. They can still work outside of Sun just off of good move pools, as well as the booster energy item, being able to activate their ability just like that. So, you know, that kind of ends up taking away from Venusaur, because, like, you know, you're gonna have to bring your Sunsetter every single game, and, like, you know, you could run maybe 2 of your Sunmons. So, like, if you have Walking Wake, you're probably not going to be running Venusaur, because Venusaur's got a lot less physical attack. So, you're not going to want to run a physical Venusaur. You still can, but it's not going to be as effective as, say, like, you know, drafting Slitherwing, who is a physical attacker. So, you know, it kind of ends up becoming on both sides of the spectrum, unfortunately. But do not get me wrong, Venusaur's still fantastic. It's probably the best, or one of the best chlorophyll Pokemon that you can grab and draft. The other one being Hisuian Lilligant. So, you know, it's probably the best special attacker that you'll get when it comes to the chlorophyll ability. But that's my thoughts on Venusaur. If you have any thoughts that I miss about Venusaur, whether they be positive, negative, or whatever, of, like, you know, maybe like you missed a little thing that kind of goes against Venusaur, unfortunately, let me know down below. But one thing, what I will leave this, you know, Venusaur himself just got a huge glow up in Scarlet and Violet. He looks so good in this game, and I absolutely just love what they did to him. So, you know, I hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you do, leave a like. Let me know also down in the comments on any ways that I can improve this. I'm doing the best that I can, but I'm just trying to get out some more content for you all. And I hope that you all have yourselves a fantastic day.